Well done, Tristan. If you get a chance to meet Tristan afterwards, look for him, encourage him, bless him. That's a bold and courageous thing that young man just did. So good morning, everybody. This is my first opportunity to jump into this summer series on the Psalms. I've been looking forward to this because I love the Psalms, and I mean that sincerely. I'm not being glib. I'm not being hyperbolic. I think the Psalms are super accessible. I think they're relevant. I find great meaning there in the poetry. There's beauty there. But what I love about the Psalms in particular is the lament and the honesty and the rawness of the Psalms. We've been saying this throughout the series. Other communicators have said this. It bears repeating, though. Definitely, we look at the Psalms as God's word to us, but by the way they're written and designed, appears to be our words to God as well. It's a great prayer book. It's someplace that you can go when you don't know what to say or where you don't know how to encourage somebody. I find in the pastoral care conversations I have all the time, I reference this. I say, hey, you'll find some meaning here. These words will give your voice to God back. It's just wonderful stuff. So I'm excited about this. For the next few minutes, I'm going to unpack Psalm 46 with you. There's going to be a QR code above me. You can get that on your device if that's something that serves you well. By the way, the August bookmark, for those of you who've been tracking this at home a little bit, doing some of this Psalms reading devotionally this summer, there's a new bookmark for August available now at the welcome desk. You can pick one of those up on the way out today. I wanted to teach this psalm in particular because I feel like this one fits the times so well. Given the state of the world, the fact that so many of us feel anxiety and fear and uncertainty, that's what this psalm, I think, is written to address. So here's the beginning. Some of you are going to know this at least a little bit. Check it out. God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam and the mountains quake with their surging. That's 3 of 11 verses. It's a short, punchy psalm. Now, as we work through the whole psalm in its entirety, I want to get you familiar with what looks to be the psalmist's intent. And I think that will help you access this psalm either now, if you need it, or later when you need it on another day. And near the end this time, we're going to watch the little film that Josh Johnson created. He's been doing inspired work throughout the summer on those little films that go with these videos, with these sermons. So, and one other side note I should mention. When I teach, I typically use the New International Version translation of the scriptures, or maybe sometimes the New Living Translation. I'm taking a little bit of a flyer on a newer translation. I've used this a handful of times in other settings. It's called The Voice. It's a newer translation. It is still a faithful word-for-word translation. It's not a paraphrase, but I kind of like the fresh language, maybe for, again, if you know this psalm a little bit, I think you'll appreciate how this sets up both the message as well as Josh's film. By the way, I know not everybody engages with the scripture or with a device, that sort of thing. But if you were looking at this in an actual Bible or on Bible app or Bible Gateway or something like that, you'll notice that Psalm 46 has an odd preamble to it. Now, this is supposed to be some additional detail to help us understand and connect with the words. In one translation, this is what's above Psalm 46. It says, from the sons of Korah, temple assistants, for the choir director, a song of the descendants of Korah to be sung by soprano voices. Does that inspire you a little bit? Do you know what that means? Well, as best as we can figure, these words, this psalm, is attributed to a group of young people from the tribe of Levi. So Korah would have been the patriarch of the family, a priest. Evidence suggests that the sons of Korah were musicians, worship leaders. So if you're familiar with this church, if you're a regular here, you know we have a number of worship leaders who will lead this congregation. People like John and Christy and Andre and Janessa. But this one says it's written for the choir director or chief musician. So in this church, Pastor Andrew is our primary worship pastor. He leads the worship ministry. So picture this psalm as being like a group of those worship leaders writing their own song and bringing it to Andrew for his affirmation. Do you like this one, Andrew? Can we do this one? That's sort of what's going on here in Psalm 46. And by the way, these sort of like you seeing there, that is in the original Hebrew text. That's not something added by translators later on. That's there. It's been there since the beginning of time. Our oldest manuscripts have those words in there. And one other version, one other translation, instead of saying to be sung by soprano voices, it says in Hebrew, it's a song for Alamoth, a song for Alamoth. Anybody know what that means? Any guesses? Yeah, nobody knows, actually. We don't know what that means. The best guess, again, is that it's there as instruction. It's a song for singing girls or soprano voices. A couple of scholars wonder if Alamoth is a reference to a high-pitched stringed instrument, but most of the language nerds think this is a reference to soprano voices. So feel free to research that and come back to me with your ideas later on. That will be lots of fun for Sunday afternoon. Anyway, regardless of whether you think these words were written to be sung by sopranos or played on an instrument, this is a bold, powerful psalm. It's a psalm of confidence, triumph. There's actually stories floating around about Martin Luther, the great reformer, that when he was in great distress, and if you know anything about his life and his story, he was in distress a lot. Apparently, he used to shout out sometimes, "Let us sing Psalm 46 together and let the devil do his worst." Not sure if that actually happened. He drank a lot of beer. So maybe, with a few pops in, he would yell. I don't know. Well, let's look at the psalm more closely. And conveniently, the sons of Korah put some helpful breaks right in the text. Again, if you're looking at this in an actual Bible, you will see the word Selah, depending on the translation, after certain verses. So there's one after verse 3 and after verse 7, and at the end, Selah or pause or interlude. And when you see that, this is instruction from the original writers to stop briefly and consider what you just read. That's the idea. To sit in what you just read for a few beats, to soak up the language and the meaning, to feel it. That's the idea. So I'm going to try to be faithful to the intent of the sons of Korah, and I'll teach Psalm 46 in the sections they broke it up into. So 11 verses, 3 sections. So here's the first section again, now from the Voice translation. God is our shelter and our strength. When troubles seem near, God is nearer and ready to help. So why run and hide? No fear, no pacing, no biting fingernails. When the earth spins out of control, we are sure and fearless. When mountains crumble and waters run wild, we are sure and fearless. Even in heavy winds and huge waves, or as mountains shake, we are sure and fearless. Now, the way Psalm 46 begins, it's a little bit unique in that a lot of the Psalms begin with a problem, with a description of a problem. They quite often begin with the psalmist saying something like, "Lord, I'm sinking. Where are you? What's going on? My enemies have risen up against me. So help me, please." That's the way several start. There's nothing wrong with that. We've been saying since week 1 of this series that if that's the way you feel, grab hold of those kinds of psalms and use those words. Grab them, make them yours. Pray your frustration, pray your lament. Let it fly. Don't hold back. But this psalm is different. Rather than beginning with a problem and working toward a hoped-for solution, this psalm begins with confidence. It's a very defiant statement about God's provision. Now, we're pretty sure that the writers at the time, they likely experienced lots of things that would cause them anxiety and fear, but that's not where Psalm 46 begins. It begins with this bold statement of trust that's probably rooted in life experience. God's got a track record of being a place of refuge. That seems to be what the writers are saying. When troubles seem near, God is nearer. God is their shelter and strength, not from a distance, but God is present. God is a present help in difficult times. G. Campbell Morgan, an old scholar, said about the line, God is our shelter and strength ready to help. The secret of the confidence is the consciousness of the nearness of God. The secret of the confidence is the consciousness in the nearness of God. I like that. God's close presence is near to me, is near to you. That means he can and will help us when we need help. That's verse 1. Then there's verse 2. Therefore, we will have no fear, no pacing, no biting of fingernails. The psalmist is applying what some have called the logic of faith. If God is a real shelter, a real source of strength, a real help to his people, we don't have to fear, even when the crisis is real. And verse 2 says, when the earth spins out of control, we are sure and fearless. Derek Kidner is one of my favorite commentators on the Psalms, and of this first part of Psalm 46, he says, this robust, defiant tone suggests that it was composed at a time of crisis, which makes the confession of faith doubly impressive. In other words, the writers are speaking to themselves and declaring to anybody who might hear, we have trust in God, therefore we will not fear, though the earth give way and the mountains fall into the sea. Like that would happen. Or maybe. Anybody been in an earthquake before? I've been in several, and it is unsettling when the ground beneath you starts to shake, and you're like, what is happening? It takes a few beats to go, is this an earthquake? Is this what it feels like? I've been in earthquakes in the car, in the kitchen, and in bed, wherever it happens. It is very, very freaky when you realize how little control you have. Or when you experience a force that's bigger than you, it's scary. It's humbling. When you're in any situation and you realize that what's happening is 100% out of your control, it's very unsettling. The psalmists are thinking about the most humbling natural phenomenon to illustrate their convictions, which leads to their reasoned estimation that God is greater than any of these things. And if you want to push this to a place that's maybe even a little bit uncomfortable or hard to get to be afraid is to rob God a little bit of his honor. Now, why the psalmists put the pauses right in the text after these kind of declarations, now does that make sense? Like when they're saying stuff, this giant, this huge, it makes sense to just sit there for a second. I know some people will read those declarations and immediately just want to go, yeah, woohoo, God is our shelter and strength. But I also know that others will read stuff like that and say, it's not really been my experience. So it's a good idea to stop and pause and think. When mountains crumble and waters run wild, even in heavy winds and huge waves, we are sure and fearless. Selah. At minimum, when you're in the middle of difficult stuff, minor or major, if you can summon the capacity to pause, to think, to reflect, to consider before being too quick to speak, maybe that will provide some direction, some hope, and some guidance, some comfort. A healthy pause can help with perspective. That's been my experience. Now we're ready for the next movement, which begins in verse 4. It's a beautiful description of the peaceful provision of God. So here we go. A pure stream flows, never to be cut off, bringing joy to the city where God makes his home, the sacred site where the Most High chooses to live. The true God never sleeps, and always resides in the city of joy. He makes it unstoppable, unshakable. When it awakes at dawn, the true God has already been at work. Trouble is on the horizon for the outside nations, not long until kingdoms will fall. God's voice thunders and the earth shakes. You know the eternal, the commander of heavenly armies, surrounds us and protects us. The true God of Jacob is our shelter, close to his heart. Some beautiful stuff there. And once again, it leads to a perfect pause point. But before we do that, look a little more closely at verse 4. We just read it. A pure stream flows, never to be cut off, bringing joy to the city where God makes his home, the sacred site where the Most High chooses to live. So the psalmists are no doubt dreaming of the abundant provision of a river for Jerusalem. It's almost certainly what they mean by the city where God makes his home. That's considered Jerusalem. And what's so significant about that is there's not a river flowing through Jerusalem. It does not have a river running through it. Jerusalem is fed historically by some small streams, but what the prophets are dreaming of is one day when a mighty river will flow right through the heart of the city, right through the temple itself, sort of like the Sturgeon River. Well, according to Josh, it's not great, but a beautiful, big, wide, healthy, clean river. This is imagery that shows up in other places in the scriptures, Ezekiel 47 and Revelation 22. This is a dream of a potential future reality. That's what they're dreaming about. And think about this. In the first section, remember how water is presented as something to fear? It's menacing, it's scary, water's running wild, heavy winds, huge waves. Now in this section, the psalmists are thinking about a life-giving river which flows and makes the city of God happy. This is a time in history when nation states would war against each other, and that's why geography is so important, because if you want to be safe, you got to have walls around your city to be more secure. Walls are what you have to defend yourself against other warring states that might come after you, but you need water. Water is huge. Water is everything. A walled city with an endless supply of water, that's as good as it gets. That's an early kind of picture of heaven. The water descriptions in verses 2 and 3 are descriptions of chaos, but the water descriptions in verse 4 are those of peace and abundance and calm. Jerusalem is glad and at peace because the city's okay. In addition to secured walls, the best defense against enemies is guaranteed unending water. The city is happy. God is our shelter and our strength. Now, this has everything to do with Jerusalem, but as we see it at this point in history, it lifts the concept of ancient Jerusalem and expands it to God's ideal, the perfect city described in the scriptures as the New Jerusalem. You can read about that in Revelation 3 and 21. So as great as awesome as the promise of a secure future is concerned, I really love what verse 5 describes. God doesn't sleep. He resides in the city of joy. He makes it unstoppable and unshakable. All the provision and promises of God are wrapped up in the idea of his presence, which is fascinating. Because here they say God always resides in the city. It shall not be moved. It'll be unstoppable, unshakable. But at the start of the psalm, remember, they referenced the mountains crumbling and waters running wild. In other words, Psalm 46 is not telling us that something horrible, something bad is going to happen. What it is telling us is that God is up to something. Even when you can't see it, God is up to something. God's there. He's not asleep while on watch. When the city awakes, the true God has already been at work. Now, you know this intuitively, you know this experientially. When it's dark, things are always a little scarier. Things are always more confusing at night and in the dark. Walking to your car or to the LRT after dark is a whole nother experience than if you do that in the light of day, especially if you're a woman. Those of us who struggle with anxiety and fear, it's almost always worse at night than it is during the day. When some of us feel the most dread, it's generally speaking again, in the darkness. There's a Latin phrase, post tenebris lux, after darkness, light. There's always light coming. It may be dark now, but light is coming. When Jesus, the Messiah, rises, darkness and adversity vanishes. Despite what they say in verse 6, trouble is on the horizon for the outside nations, but God's voice thunders. The commander of heavenly armies surrounds and protects. There's a really interesting line at the end of verse 7, just before the pause, and that's the reference to the true God of Jacob. Now, there's a rabbit trail to be gone down here, but we won't go very far down it. But part of this would look to be a reference to the original covenant. So if you know the scriptures a little bit, back in Genesis, there's this big moment where God establishes a covenant with Abraham, then later it's past Isaac and Jacob. All that's back in Genesis. It's all good. But if you know their story, especially Jacob's story, this would sort of show up as a comment about God's grace, because not all these folks are noble characters, certainly not Jacob. He's kind of a piece of work. He's not exactly a holy man. The God of Israel, the one true God, is a shelter and strength for his people, all his people, even the misfits. The eternal God surrounds us and protects us. The true God of Jacob is our shelter. Selah. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. Here's the final section, starting with verse 8. Come, gaze, fix your eyes on what the eternal can do. Amazing. He has worked desolation here on this battlefield, earth. God can stop wars anywhere in the world. I like the sound of that one. He can make scrap of all weapons, snap bows, shatter spears, and burn shields. If in the first part of Psalm 46, the emphasis is on God as shelter and strength, near the end, there's a change in emphasis. Here, the writers are shifting toward consideration of the glory of God. They say in verse 8, be still, be calm, and see. Look around the world and see the great works of God. Now, we can see evidence of God's character and creativity in creation all around us. Theologians call this general revelation, that which we can discern about the Creator from the created world. My friend Jordan, who I golf with a lot, calls this the Bible of creation, is a little phrase that he likes to use. But the psalmist here is also referencing the hand of God in human history. That's the idea in the second part of verse 8. Now, admittedly, this is a uniquely Jewish perspective. The idea here is when the battle is over, look around and see how God has helped us win, as we can see how God has helped us prevail against our enemies. I would imagine that if you're on the other side of a losing battle, your perspective, you might be wondering, where was God for us? I get that. But from the perspective of the victors, God, I love it when you snap the bows and shatter the spears and burn the shields of our enemies. That's all I want to say about that. But now let's look at verse 10. Amid reflecting on wars and battles, the spinning of the earth, crumbling mountains, and waters running wild, this is how the psalm ends. It ends with an unexpected plot twist. If you came to church this morning, or maybe you're watching online, you might know a line that you didn't realize was from Psalm 46. This is the one that I'm guessing that some of you have rattling around in your head already. It's just this: be still, be calm, see and understand that I am the true God. I am honored among all the nations. I am honored over all the earth. Or how you probably know it is, be still and know that I am God. Now, maybe you caught this, maybe you didn't, but in verse 10, there's a shift in who's speaking. In the first 9 verses, we have the sons of Korah telling us all about God's greatness and God's provision and God's protections. But in verse 10, God is speaking in the first person. God is speaking to us. God is speaking directly to you. He says, be still, be calm, see and understand that I am God. The idea here isn't like freeze where you are, like stand in one place. Nah. The Hebrew scholars suggest that the sense in the original language is more like all argument and all opposition should stop and be still. Slow down, be calm, slow your objections. This is the appropriate response to everything that's been said. In the middle of the defiant faith of the psalmist, God breaks in and says, I want to add something here. He says, because you know and because you can see my glory and greatness, stop arguing with me. Don't oppose me. Don't question me. Just surrender. Be still. Be calm. See and understand that I am the true God. And then 46 concludes, I am honored among all the nations. I am honored over all the earth. You know the eternal, the commander of heavenly armies surrounds us and protects us. The true God of Jacob is our shelter close to his heart. So verse 11 is a lot like verse 7. So if our worship leaders were going to put this song to music and they were looking to be faithful to the original text, they'd probably come up with a chorus that reflects verses 7 and 11. Stuff about God's protection. The God of Jacob is our shelter. The idea is the same God who is exalted in all the earth is with us. So what else do we need? So here's the message in a nutshell. And why we put things in nutshells, I do not know. Anyway, here's the gist. The God who has declared that he will be exalted among the nations in all the earth, that God is with you. So whatever's going on for you right now, if things are good, if your world is peaceful, then praise God, I'm happy for you. Don't feel guilty, don't feel bad about feeling good. Okay? Give God thanks, that's great, that's awesome. But if this is a challenging season, and I know for many of you it is, if the stress is high, the anxiety is high, and the fear is high, I want you to know that you are a deeply loved child of God. Fix your eyes on what the eternal has done and can do. And as best you can, be still and be calm and know that he is God. Especially if your faith is in Jesus Christ and what he did at the cross to accomplish your salvation, he is with you. And it doesn't get any better than that. Here's Joshua's short film on Psalm 46.
The country can't have chaos, so the government is trying to, fix all the things that they came in to try to do. But I think it does still look quite small, if you like.
Going back and forth
To this battle in
God is our shelter and our strength. When trouble seems near, God is near and he's ready to help. So why run and hide? No fear, no pacing, no biting fingernails. When the earth spins out of control, we are sure and fearless. When mountains crumble and the waters run wild, we are sure and fearless. Even in heavy winds and huge waves, or as mountains shake, we are sure and fearless. pure stream flows, never to be cut off, bringing joy to the city where God makes his home, the sacred site where the Most High chooses to live. The true God never sleeps and always resides in the city of joy. He makes it unstoppable, unshakable. When it awakes at dawn, the true God has already been at work. Trouble is on the horizon for the outside nations, not long until kingdoms will fall. God's voice thunders and the earth shakes. You know the Eternal, the commander of heavenly armies, surrounds us and protects us. The true God of Jacob is our shelter, close to his heart. Come, gaze, fix your eyes on what the Eternal can do. Amazing. He has worked desolation here on this battlefield, Earth. God can stop wars anywhere in the world. He can make scrap of all weapons, snap bows, shatter spears, and burn shields. Be still. Be calm. See and understand I am the true God. I am honored among all the nations. I am honored over all the earth. You know the Eternal, the commander of heavenly armies, surrounds us and protects us. The true God of Jacob is our shelter, close to his heart.